I was still wearing my camis when I landed at Bradley International Airport in Hartford, Connecticut, 31 hours from Okinawa. My mother's death certificate folded in my breast pocket. I sat down on a baggage carousel that wasn't moving and cried in public for the first time since I was 9 years old. Not because she was gone, because of what my brother Derek had said on the phone. 6 hours after she died, before the funeral home had even collected her body. While I stood outside the base chapel at 2 in the morning, with a typhoon warning siren testing itself somewhere in the dark. There's no will, Raina. Mom died intestate. The house goes to probate. You've been gone so long you probably don't even know what that means. My name is Sergeant First Class Raina Castellano, United States Marine Corps. I have been shot at in 3 countries, survived 2 vehicle rollovers, and once talked a 19-year-old private down from a ledge in Helmand Province, using nothing but bad coffee and the truth. I knew exactly what it meant. And I knew he was lying. Let me tell you about my mother. Carmen Lucinda Castellano. She came to the United States from Puerto Rico at 22 years old, with $40, a suitcase, and an almost religious belief that property was the only thing that couldn't be taken from you. By the time she was 35, she had saved enough, working double shifts as a hospital dietary aide, to put a down payment on a 3-bedroom colonial in Wethersfield, Connecticut. She paid that house off in 17 years. She refinished the floors herself. She kept every receipt, every insurance document, every tax return in a fireproof box under her bed. She called it, without irony, the fortress. My mother had 2 things she tended with equal patience: the garden out back, and a worn black Bible she kept on her nightstand, her name in gold on the cover. Faded almost to nothing. Both required time. Both gave back more than you put in. She said this about roses, and she said this about scripture, and I never understood until recently that she was saying the same thing twice. My mother was not a woman who died without a plan. I am the youngest of 3. My brothers, Derek, 44, and Marcus, 41, are both older than me by enough years that they never really saw me as a peer. Derek is a mortgage broker. Marcus manages a car dealership his father-in-law owns. They are the kind of men who believe that having opinions loudly is the same as being right. When I enlisted at 18, Derek called it a waste. Marcus said I was running away from my problems. My mother drove me to the MEP station herself, brought tamales she'd made at 5 in the morning, and held my face in both her hands before I went inside. "You're going to be the strongest one," she told me. "You already are. I just need you to know it." 12 years later, I had done tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, trained alongside Allied forces in Japan, earned a combat action ribbon, and been recommended twice for meritorious promotion. My brothers had done none of that. But because they had stayed close to home, close to Mom, they had convinced themselves that proximity was the same as devotion. It isn't. Devotion is showing up. Devotion is the hard, unglamorous work of loving someone through difficulty, not the comfortable work of being nearby and calling it sacrifice. What Derek and Marcus had done, I would learn, was something far uglier than proximity. My mother was diagnosed with congestive heart failure 3 years before she died. Not a death sentence, the doctors said. Manageable, with medication and lifestyle changes. But it required oversight. Derek and Marcus stepped in, enthusiastically. Derek became her primary driver. He took her to appointments, sat in with doctors, asked questions. He started handling her bills to reduce her stress. He had her add him to her bank accounts. Marcus set up her online accounts, changed her email password so she wouldn't accidentally click on scam links, started forwarding her mail to his address to make sure nothing important got missed. Layer by layer, without her fully realizing it, they were building a wall between my mother and her own affairs. But Carmen Lucinda Castellano didn't survive 40 years in this country by being naive. She saw what was happening, She just couldn't stop it alone, and she didn't want to worry me while I was deployed. Instead, she did something very smart. She wrote it all down. I didn't know about the diary until I opened the boxes. When my mother's personal effects were shipped home, they came in 2 standard cardboard boxes. Derek told me over the phone that he would take care of everything. I told him I'd prefer to do it personally. There was a pause. Raina, you've been gone a long time. Let us handle this. That's what family is for. I got on the first available flight. The hospice facility was kind. The nurse who had cared for my mother in her final weeks, a Haitian woman named Claudette, who had the gentle authority of someone who has walked beside death many times, met me at the door. Your brothers came yesterday, she told me. I kept my face neutral. Did they take anything? Claudette hesitated, the way people hesitate when they don't want to say something, but their conscience won't let them stay quiet. They looked through a few things. I told them the personal effects were supposed to be held for next of kin to claim together. I'm the designated representative, I said. I have her healthcare proxy documentation. She looked relieved, like she'd been hoping someone would say exactly that. She handed me the boxes. Then she reached into her uniform pocket and gave me something else. She asked me to hold this separately. She said her daughter would come, and her daughter would know what to do with it. It was my mother's Bible. Worn black cover, her name in gold on the front. I didn't open it in the facility. I carried it to the rental car, set it on the passenger seat. An HVAC unit hummed somewhere on the hospice building behind me. 2 rows over, someone started a car and let it idle. I could hear the paper when I unfolded it. I did not make a sound. It was the last will and testament of Carmen Lucinda Castellano. Dated 14 months earlier. Signed. Witnessed by 2 names I didn't recognize, which meant they weren't family, which meant she'd done this deliberately outside of our orbit. The notary stamp in the lower corner was clear and dark. She had left the house to me. I set the document flat on the passenger seat. I took out my phone and photographed it. 4 angles, close and wide. The way we document evidence in the field. Then I sat back and said out loud. To no one. I see it, Mom. I understand. She had planted this document the way she planted everything. At the right depth, at the right time, in a place she trusted would hold. There was also a note, written in pencil in the margin beside her signature. This one is real. The other one is not. You'll find out why. The other one. I called my JAG contact from Okinawa. Can someone produce a fraudulent will in probate? I asked. It happens more than people think, she said. What do I do if I find out my brothers submitted a fake will? You come to me, and you don't say anything to them first. Marines don't tip off the enemy before they move. I checked into a motel outside Wethersfield, instead of my mother's house. I told Derek I was exhausted from travel and needed a night to decompress. He sounded relieved. Let me tell you what was happening on both sides of this situation simultaneously. Because the contrast matters. While Derek was booking a vacation to Aruba using Mom's debit card, I have the receipt, dated March 4th, 14 months before she died. I was sitting in a motel room in Wethersfield at 1:47 in the morning, with a yellow legal pad, a county property records printout, and a $6 coffee from the gas station across the street. My lower back, which has argued with me since the second vehicle rollover in Helmand Province, made its opinion known around midnight. I didn't move. While Marcus was financing a new Escalade, using a loan application tied to Mom's address and credit history, I have that document too. I was reading a 94-page Connecticut probate law PDF from the Bar Association's public website, highlighter in hand. They spent. I counted. That's the whole story, really. Everything else is just documentation. Over the next 3 days, I conducted what I mentally called recon. Day 1. I visited the Wethersfield town clerk's office and pulled the property records on my mother's house. 3 months before her death, there had been a title inquiry on the property. Initiated not by my mother, but by Derek's mortgage brokerage. He had been running numbers on her house. Day 2. The morning of day 2 took me first to the Wethersfield post office on Maple Street. The mail forwarding request was on file, submitted 8 months earlier. The form was filled out in handwriting that wasn't Mom's. Close, but not close enough for anyone who had spent 18 years watching her sign birthday cards and permission slips and grocery list. The forwarding address was Marcus's home on Brookside Lane. Not Derek's. Marcus's. This was the detail that clarified everything. Derek was the one who moved the money, the transfers, the signatures, the accounts. But Marcus had handled something more fundamental. He controlled what my mother was allowed to know. Every insurance update, every account statement, every legal notice that arrived in her mailbox went to his house first. He sorted it. He filtered it. He decided what reached her and what didn't. Derek executed. Marcus architected. I wrote both names at the top of my legal pad and underlined them separately. 2 brothers. 1 operation. Different jobs. The same outcome. A woman slowly losing access to her own life, while believing she was being taken care of. Mom had written it in her diary in September. Different jobs. The same plan. She'd named it before I had. That afternoon I drove past Derek's brokerage office on Route 9, on my way to the Bar Association. His parking space was marked President, a sign he'd installed sometime in the past year. White letters on a dark background, the kind of thing you order when you've stopped worrying about appearances. In the space beneath the sign, a black BMW M5, 3 months off the lot. I know because I ran the plate. The registration came back to Morrison Property Holdings LLC. Registered address: 47 Elmwood Drive, Wethersfield, Connecticut. My mother's house. He had incorporated using her address. He had bought himself a $60,000 car and registered the vehicle's LLC to the home he was in the process of stealing. He wasn't hiding any of it. That's the specific thing I want you to understand about a certain kind of greed. It doesn't hide. It parks in the front row with its name on the space and assumes it's safe, because it believes the person who could stop it is 7,000 miles away and wouldn't know where to look even if she came home. I had been home for 40 hours. I had already looked. Day 3. I located the attorney whose name appeared on the will Derek had already filed with the probate court. Gerald Pratt, strip mall office in New Britain. Online reviews sparse and recently posted. I pulled his Bar Association records. 2 prior complaints. Both involved disputed estate documents. I sent copies to my JAG contact. Then I opened the Bible again, reading it fully. Between the pages of various chapters, tucked carefully, like bookmarks, were folded pieces of paper. My mother's handwriting, dated over 18 months. March 14th. Derek asked me to sign something at the kitchen table. Said it was a banking authorization. I signed it. He put it in his briefcase before I could read it fully. June 2nd. Marcus changed my email password again. He says he'll fix it. He hasn't. September 8th. Derek handles the money. He's the one making the transfers. The one who had me sign things. But Marcus is the one who controls what I know, and when I know it. He changes what I can access. He forwards my mail. He is not the one taking. He is the one making sure I cannot see what is being taken. Different jobs. The same plan. October 3rd. I asked Derek about the will today. My real will. He said, "What will, Mom? You never made a will." I made a will 14 months ago. I have it in the Bible. I know exactly where it is. November 11th. I am tired now in a way that doesn't go away with sleep. But I am not confused. They want me to seem confused. I am writing this down because I am not confused. I love my sons. I do not trust them with my house. I read that last entry 3 times. I set the diary down. I picked up the legal pad. I wrote 2 names at the top of a clean page. Derek, Marcus. underlined them both, and got to work. Before I tell you what I found in that house, I want to ask you something. Have you ever kept quiet? Not because you were afraid, not because you didn't know, but because you understood that speaking too soon would cost you everything you'd already built in silence? Have you ever been called the absent one, the one who left, while you were actually the only one paying close enough attention? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you believe that patience is its own kind of power, that documentation is its own kind of protection, subscribe to this channel. What comes next is where it gets real. Through my JAG contact, I connected with an estate litigation attorney in Hartford named Denise Ochoa. 48 years old, 20 years in practice, originally from Bridgeport. The kind of woman who keeps a potted cactus on her desk, because she identifies with it. She had handled 6 cases involving disputed wills in the previous 4 years and won 5 of them. I sat across from her desk and put everything on the table. Literally. The Bible, the notarized will, the notes, the property records, the Bar Association documents on Gerald Pratt. She read quietly for a long time. Then she said, "Your brothers made 3 significant mistakes." I waited. First mistake, they assumed you'd be too grief-stricken and too far away to move quickly. Second mistake, they used an attorney with a history of corner-cutting, which means there will be technical deficiencies in whatever they filed. Third mistake, she paused. They forgot your mother was smarter than them. She picked up the notarized will. This is properly executed, witnessed by 2 non-beneficiaries, notarized by a licensed notary whose stamp I can verify. The date precedes the document your brothers filed in probate by over a year. If we can demonstrate that the later will is fraudulent, we don't just win the property dispute, we open a criminal matter. How long, I asked. To freeze the probate proceeding, maybe 10 days. To fully litigate, potentially 2 years. My leave is 90 days, I said. You don't need to be here for 2 years. You need to be here for the next 30 days. After that, I carry it. What do you need from me? She smiled for the first time. Do what Marines do. Find things. The day after I retained Denise Ochoa, Derek filed an updated motion with the probate court. Not a correction. An acceleration. He was requesting an expedited hearing to close the estate within 30 days. He was moving faster because he felt safe. He had no way of knowing that his brokerage's title inquiry was already in my folder. That the BMW's LLC registration had been photographed. That the mail forwarding request bore his brother's handwriting. That a JAG-connected attorney in Hartford was already filing a competing motion. He filed because he was confident. He was confident because he believed I was a soldier who had been overseas for 12 years and didn't know how any of this worked. That belief, that specific, measurable, catastrophically wrong belief, was the wave that broke everything open. My mother's house was technically in probate, but Derek had been living in it as if it were already his. I had a key. My mother had given it to me when I graduated boot camp and said, "This is always your door." I entered at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. I moved through the rooms carefully, a flashlight in one hand, my phone recording video in the other. What I was looking for. The fireproof box. The fortress. My brothers had not found it. It was under my mother's bed, exactly where it had always been. I pulled it out, opened it with the combination, my birthday, reversed, and photographed every page inside. Tax returns going back 22 years. The original mortgage, paid off and stamped. Her insurance policies. Her bank account records, which included printed statements from the past 18 months, showing a pattern of withdrawals and transfers that had not been authorized by her in any document I could find. Withdrawals to Morrison Property Holdings LLC. Transfers to a credit card account that wasn't hers. I closed the box, replaced it precisely as I had found it, and left the house the same way I entered it. Back in the motel, I sent everything to Denise Ochoa at midnight. She responded at 6 in the morning. Call me when you wake up. This is bigger than a will contest. Let me give you the full picture before I tell you what happened in that room. 18 months. $62,000 removed from my mother's accounts. 38 separate transfers. 6 transactions routed through Morrison Property Holdings LLC. The same LLC registered to her address. The same LLC, whose registered asset was a $60,000 car, parked in a space marked President. 14 documents bearing signatures the bank's fraud team later flagged as inconsistent. 4 on banking instruments, 3 on insurance forms, 7 on property-related filings. 1 fraudulent will submitted to a Connecticut probate court. 1 notary whose certification was obtained without her presence at the signing. 1 attorney with 2 prior complaints against his license. Now building toward a third. Derek walked into my mother's living room that Sunday, convinced I had nothing. I had 43 pages, tabbed and indexed, in a binder in my bag. He thought the ground was solid. He had built it himself. He didn't know someone had already been underneath it, cataloging every crack. The confrontation happened on a Sunday. I chose Sunday because Marcus would have his wife with him, which meant he would perform instead of strategize. I arranged to meet at the house, my mother's house, which I still refuse to call anything other than that. Under the pretext of sorting through her things together as a family. I was wearing a recording device. Legal in Connecticut, which is a one-party consent state. Derek opened with, "Raina, we know this is hard. We want to make sure you feel included in the process. The house is going to need to be sold to settle the estate, but we'll make sure you get your fair share." "What's my fair share?" I asked. His mouth was moving. I let him continue. I wasn't listening to understand him. I already knew what he was going to say. I was listening to make sure the recording device was picking him up clearly. The room had carpet, which could muffle lower frequencies. I adjusted my posture slightly. Better angle. He landed on a number. $80,000 to $90,000. His voice carried the practiced confidence of a man who believes financial language intimidates people. The house was worth $420,000. I had pulled the current comp values from public records in 12 minutes, 3 days ago. I reached into my bag. I set the Bible on the coffee table. Nobody said anything. Derek's eyes went to the Bible. Then to me. Something shifted in his expression. Not fear, not yet. Something slower and more revealing than that. "Raina." He set down his glass with deliberate calm, the way people speak to someone they've decided needs to be managed rather than answered. "You've been serving overseas for 12 years. That's something to be proud of. But estate law is complicated. Connecticut probate has specific procedural requirements. You've been away a long time." He glanced at Marcus briefly. "I don't think you understand what you're reading." I let him finish. I let every word of it land where he intended. And I let the silence after it sit there long enough that he thought he'd made his point. Then I opened the Bible to Proverbs 31. I removed the document. I placed it face up on the table in front of him. Her handwriting. Her notary. 14 months ago. 6 words. I let them work. "I know what a notary stamp looks like," I continued. "I know what a witness signature means under Connecticut General Statutes Section 45A-251. I know this document predates the one you filed with the probate court by 14 months. I know Gerald Pratt has 2 prior bar complaints. I know his notary was not present at your signing, because she told me herself, 2 days ago, and has already submitted a written recantation to the Bar Association." I set the binder on the table beside the Bible. "I also know that Morrison Property Holdings LLC, registered to this address, to Mom's address, received $38,000 from her accounts over 18 months. I know the LLC's primary registered asset is a black BMW M5, currently parked in a space marked President, at your Route 9 office." I looked at him steadily. "What exactly is it you think I don't understand?" The condescension left his face. What replaced it was something I recognized from 12 years of fieldwork, the precise expression of someone who has just understood that the terrain they were confident about had been mapped by someone else entirely. Marcus stood up. "You've been spying on us." 43 pages. Indexed. I set the binder directly in front of him. "Your mail forwarding request is on file at the Wethersfield Post Office. Your handwriting on the form. Your home address as the destination. Every account statement, every insurance update, every legal notice that arrived in Mom's mailbox for the last 8 months. Yours first." Marcus said nothing. The architecture of his role was now visible, named, and documented. He had no speech prepared for this moment, because he had never believed this moment would come. I didn't raise my voice. A trainer of mine once said, "The person speaking loudest in a room usually has the least information." I had everything I needed. I had no reason to be loud. Monday morning, Denise Ochoa files. Probate is frozen. Criminal referral is drafted. Derek said, "Even if you have a will, it doesn't prove fraud. That's for the state to determine. What happens next is your choice." "You're threatening us." "Informing. There's a difference." I stood. I picked up the Bible and the will. "This house belongs to me. Our mother decided that." I looked around the room. At the rearranged furniture. At the throw pillows that weren't hers. "I want her rocking chair moved back where it belongs before I leave." I walked out. The next 4 weeks were the most legally intense of my life. Denise Ochoa moved with precision and without drama. Within 48 hours of that Sunday, she had filed an emergency motion to freeze the probate proceeding. Within a week, she had initiated discovery on the alternative will Derek had filed. The notary had not personally witnessed the signing. Gerald Pratt had presented the notary with a document he claimed had been signed in his office, where the notary had not been present. She immediately recanted her certification. Gerald Pratt's bar license was suspended within 3 weeks, pending investigation. The bank records confirmed the rest, $62,000, moved out of my mother's accounts over 18 months. Through methods that required either forged signatures or the exploitation of the joint account access, Derek had convinced her to grant him $38,000 to Morrison Property Holdings LLC. The remainder to credit card balances in Marcus's name, which, it turned out, included the Escalade payments he'd redirected once the original financing was flagged. I had gone looking for a stolen house. I had found something much larger. I want to say something here that I mean carefully. I do not believe my brothers were born malicious. I remember Derek teaching me to ride a bike in the driveway of that same house. I remember Marcus reading me stories badly, in the funny voices that made me laugh. There was a time when they were simply my brothers, and that time was real. What I believe is that proximity without accountability is dangerous. Being the ones who stayed gave them power without oversight, and power without oversight does what it always does. It expands. It takes. They told themselves stories about being owed something for their presence, about me being absent, about how the house would just go to waste if it went to me, 7,000 miles away in a uniform. They told those stories until the stories felt like facts. Derek's specific story, the one that unraveled him in my mother's living room, was the one that convinced him I was the manageable variable. That 12 years overseas meant 12 years of ignorance. That a soldier couldn't also be someone who reads Bar Association records, and Connecticut probate statutes, and mail forwarding requests on file at the Wethersfield Post Office. He believed what was convenient to believe. That is what competence blindness looks like up close. Not malice, but the deep, expensive mistake of assuming that, because someone is far away, they cannot see. My mother had bet on me seeing. She was right. The formal settlement conference happened on a Thursday in early February. 52 days after I had landed at Bradley International Airport crying on a baggage carousel. Denise Ochoa sat beside me, the binder on the table between us. The terms, the fraudulent will withdrawn from probate. My mother's authentic will recognized as the controlling document. The house transferred to my name with full title. Restitution of $62,000. Directed to a trust in my mother's name. Distributed to her church's food pantry. And a scholarship fund at the community college she had always wanted to attend. Any criminal prosecution decisions to remain with the state attorney's office. Derek's attorney asked for modifications. Wanted the criminal matter resolved concurrently. I looked at Derek when his attorney said that. He was staring at the table. The criminal matter is not mine to resolve, I said. I have a career, a unit, obligations I've already deferred longer than I should have. I'm offering resolution. What you do with it is your business. 3 minutes of quiet conferral. Derek looked up. His face had the look of a man who had run out of angles. Fine, he said. Marcus didn't look up at all. I had one morning in the house, before I flew back. I got up before dawn and made coffee in my mother's kitchen, using her percolator, the one she'd owned since 1987 and refused to replace. I put her rocking chair back where it belonged. In the corner of the living room, beside the window that faced the garden. Then I went outside. I stood at the edge of the dormant garden beds and made a quiet decision that had nothing to do with legal proceedings or property records. For 12 years, I had been the one they called capable, reliable, fine, the one who had it handled, who didn't need anything, who was far enough away to be forgotten until she was needed. The family had a story about me, that I had left, that I was absent, that my distance was a kind of surrender. That morning I decided I was done being available for people who only noticed me when they needed something from me. I was the custodian of this house now. Not the family emergency fund. Not the absent daughter. Not the one who left. The one my mother chose. That was enough. That was everything. I thought about the document tucked between the pages of Proverbs 31. She had planted it the way she planted everything out here, at the right depth, in the right season, trusting that the ground would hold until the right hands came to find it. She had tended her evidence the way she tended her roses, cut back to almost nothing on the outside, alive at the root. I took out my phone and called my JAG contact in Okinawa. It's done, I said. How's? Criminal referral still active. State has it, not my jurisdiction anymore. She laughed a little. You did it. Mom did it, I said. I just followed the trail she left. Derek's plea was entered on February 28th, 52 days after the confrontation in my mother's living room. The terms required full restitution of $62,000, plus accrued interest, totaling $67,340. Probation, and the loss of his Connecticut mortgage broker license, revoked by the Department of Banking on March 15th. The revocation language in the filing noted specifically that the license had been used in connection with fraudulent property instruments. The credential Derek had built his career on, the one he'd leveraged to run a title inquiry on his mother's house. The one that gave him the language to confuse and reassure her. The state took it with a single document and a date. Marcus's cooperation agreement was filed March 14th. His reduced charge carried 3 years probation and $24,000 in restitution from his portion of the transferred funds. The mail forwarding authorization was cited in the agreement as evidence of the coordinated nature of the scheme. Gerald Pratt surrendered his bar license on April 3rd. The numbers aligned in a way that required no commentary. Morrison Property Holdings LLC. The entity, Derek registered to Mom's address. The one that received $38,000 of her dollars. The one whose primary registered asset was a $60,000 car in a space marked President. Was dissolved as part of the plea agreement on March 2nd. The BMW was liquidated in mock. Proceeds went toward restitution. Marcus had used Mom's credit history to finance the Escalade. The Escalade was repossessed on April 7th. When the lender discovered fraud in the original loan application. The March 4th Aruba vacation, booked on Mom's debit card while I sat in a motel room with a yellow legal pad at 1:47 in the morning, The fraud restitution order clawed it back. Transaction by transaction. With interest. They had spent. I had counted. The count was now complete. Line by line. With dates attached. Denise Ochoa sent me a different kind of email 6 months after the settlement. A Navy petty officer in Rhode Island. An older brother. A mother's house. The documents different in detail but identical in structure. A daughter deployed. A son in proximity. An estate quietly rerouted. I said yes. Because someone had to say yes for me once. My mother had done that. From 14 months before she died. And the least I could do was carry that forward. I am renting the house to a family I vetted as carefully as I've vetted anything in my career. The family who lives there now has 3 children. Their youngest has started a garden in the backyard. They send me pictures. I keep those photos in the same folder as the photographs I took of my mother's will. 4 angles, close and wide. In a hospice parking lot under a reading light. An HVAC humming behind me. The paper audible when I unfolded it. One is what she preserved for me. The other is what she left for the world. A garden where her garden was tended by new hands. Full of things still growing. She would have liked that. Maybe you already know the shape of this story. Not the details. Not the Connecticut probate court. Not the Bible in the hospice parking lot. Not the attorney with the cactus on her desk. But the feeling underneath it. The feeling of being the one who is gone, and therefore, in their minds, the one who doesn't count. Maybe you're the one in the family who moved away, who built something elsewhere, who stopped showing up for the holidays, because every holiday was a performance you were tired of rehearsing, and maybe someone back home has been quietly using your absence as permission, telling themselves that because you left, you forfeited something. That because you chose a different life, you chose out of everything that came before it. I want to talk to you directly for a moment. You didn't forfeit anything. Choosing to build your own life is not abandonment. Pursuing a career, military or otherwise, is not abandonment. Being geographically distant from people who would have preferred you close enough to control, is not abandonment. What my brothers called my absence, my mother called my strength. She saw the same thing they saw. A daughter who left, who was 7,000 miles away, who was unavailable in the ways that required physical presence, and she drew a completely different conclusion. She didn't see someone who had checked out. She saw someone who had built the capability to come home and finish something she couldn't finish alone. She planned around my absence. She trusted it. Across 12 years and 7,000 miles. I have thought about why she chose to trust me specifically, and I think the answer is simpler than it appears. She trusted me because I had demonstrated, repeatedly, that I could be trusted with hard things. Not because I was present. Not because I was convenient. Because when things were genuinely hard, when there was real danger, real complexity, real cost, I showed up and did the work. That is what trust is actually built on. Not proximity. Not sentiment. Not who stayed home. If someone in your life has mistaken your distance for disengagement, if they have been using your absence to make decisions they never would have made in front of you, I want you to hear this clearly. Your absence was not consent. It was never consent. The things that belong to you still belong to you, regardless of how long you've been gone. Here is what I have come to understand about the kind of theft my brothers committed. It relies entirely on the assumption that the person being stolen from either doesn't know or won't look. Greed of this kind is not bold. It is not brave. It wears the costume of competence, the devoted son managing affairs, the responsible family member stepping up. And it counts on that costume to buy enough time to make the theft permanent. The costume works because we want to believe it. We want to believe that the people closest to us are acting from love. And so we extend trust to bank accounts, to legal documents, to power of attorney, before we've had reason to doubt. My mother saw through the costume. She saw it early. As for seeing through it and being able to stop it, Those are two different problems. And she could only solve one of them alone. What she understood, and what I carry forward from everything that happened, is that greed depends on silence. Not just the silence of the person being stolen from. The silence of family members who suspect but don't ask. The silence of the person who is gone, and therefore assumed to be out of the picture. Every one of those silences is a resource that greed consumes. My mother decided to convert her silence into something else. Into documentation. Into legal instruments. Into a Bible with a will inside it. Given to a nurse with instructions to wait for the right person. She turned passive silence into active preparation. And preparation, done correctly, done patiently, done with the right documentation and the right people in your corner, is worth more than any confrontation. That is the lesson I carry. Not that you should fight louder, not that you should confront sooner, but that what looks like silence from the outside can be architecture on the inside. If you are in a situation that looks like mine, let me tell you what my mother would tell you. Write it down. Date it. Every time something happens that doesn't sit right, write it down with a date and put it somewhere only you control. Not at home. Not in a shared space. Somewhere only you. Find a professional who specializes in exactly this problem. Estate litigation attorneys exist. Elder law attorneys exist. Forensic accountants exist. People who have seen this exact shape of theft before and know what constitutes evidence. You don't need to understand the law completely. You need to find someone who does, and give them what you've been quietly collecting. Then wait. Let them believe they're winning. Let them make the moves they were going to make anyway. Now documented, now recorded, now part of a file that gets thicker every day. Don't warn them. Don't tip your hand. Let evidence accumulate until the outcome is not a fight. It's a formality. You are allowed to protect what is yours. You are allowed to take your time doing it. You are allowed to be gone, to be far away, to be in a different country, to be wearing a uniform 7,000 miles from home, and come back to find what belongs to you still waiting, intact, because you built the right structures before you left. My mother left me a house. She also left me something harder to measure, the knowledge that love, when it is real, plans. It doesn't just feel, it acts quietly, over time, in ways that protect the people it loves, even after it's no longer present to protect them directly. She planted a will in a Bible. She hid records in a piano and a fireproof box under her bed. She gave a nurse instructions. And she trusted that her daughter would come and know what to do with them. They tried to burn the will, but she had hidden it somewhere no fire could reach. Thanks, Mom. If this story found you at the right time, share it with someone who's been called the absent one, with a veteran navigating family and property, with anyone who has ever been told that leaving means losing. And if you've walked a road like this one, leave it in the comments. You are not alone in it, and your story might be the thing that helps someone else find theirs. Subscribe for more stories of people who refuse to be written out of what was theirs.